This is our slab roller, and it is one of a kind. It's very special, and it's definitely a luxury. Okay? If you choose not to use a slab roller correctly, you can use rolling pins. It takes you twice as long, they're not as even, it's not as efficient. But this guy right here, it is really important that you guys are handling with care because it can break a finger, okay? But if this is broken, we don't have any replacements. Okay, so as long as you follow the directions, we should be all set. So with the slab roller comes a piece of canvas. You guys all know what canvas does to clay. What's it do?
Dries it out.
Dries it out. It's also going to make sure it doesn't stick to the board or the hole. There's 2 holes in the slab roller. We also have these boards. There's the second pole. We have these boards. They're all the same thickness. You're going to need 3 boards. Everyone say 3 boards.
3 boards.
Okay. And we're going to go ahead and take 2 away. In the steps that I gave you, it says use 3 boards, 1 at a time, making sure to rotate your clay every time. That's what your steps say, and that's what I'm about to show you. So our canvas is always folded, and our clay is going to go right here, put the canvas on top, then we roll through. We have our 2-pound ball of clay, 2 pounds, not the 4 pounds you guys watched last class. We all did 2 and 4, right? Okay. So you're going to take your 2 pounds of clay. This might be a little bit more. I didn't really measure mine out for demo's sake. And what you want to do is you're going to hit it a little bit flatter, okay? Because you only have this much space in between the board and the pole. And we want to make sure that if there's a big ball of clay, it's going to hurt the slab roller. So we do need to flatten it just a little bit, okay? Please flatten it with your hands. Do not put it on the board and then flatten it because you're going to break the board. I don't know where this slab roller came from. It might be so old there are no replacements, so please don't break the boards because I cannot replace them. Okay, so use your hand to kind of hit the clay a little bit flatter. You're going to take your clay, put it in the middle. You guys are going to be working in partners. Okay, so you're going to have 1 ball of clay here, 1 ball of clay here as you guys roll through and rotate your clay. That's because there's 22 of you and there's only 1 slab roller, so we can get it through faster if we have 2 people. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to put it in the middle and put my canvas on top. I want to make sure my canvas is nice and flat. There's no creases. It's all the way up to the top and my clay is further up here. We don't want to put our clay down here because when we flatten it out, it's going to go off the board. Okay? And sometimes we need to get a little bit of a gentle push. So just kind of giving a gentle push as it goes through, making sure the canvas stays nice and flat. When you're working in partners, make sure your partner's hand is nowhere near this when you're rolling through. So you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Once you feel the release of the pressure because there's no more clay, go ahead and roll it back, keeping the board on that bottom hole. And our clay is going to be long, like this. Now, what is the width of your base? What's the size of your base supposed to be?
4 to 6.
4 to 6 inches, okay? So if we had all 3 boards and we rolled it out this way, we're gonna need a really long, skinny piece of clay. We want something more round. So what you're gonna do, your clay was like this, we're gonna go ahead and rotate it. So it's the opposite direction. When it gets stretched out, then it'll be stretched out more evenly and not this like skinny, long piece of clay. And that's where the second board comes in. Take the second board, you're gonna put it underneath the first one, and notice that it's gonna hit the pole, okay? You have to kind of press down and forward at the same time to lift it up over that pole, making sure both boards are nice and even, making sure your clay has been rotated and it's towards the top, and then you're gonna go ahead and roll it through again. Canvas is nice and flat. If the canvas isn't flat and it creases, it's gonna make a big crease in your base, so that's important. So again, this clay is for the base of your coil vessel. It's gonna be the foundation, the sturdy part. You wanna make sure it's done right. Okay, so this is 2 boards. I'm gonna go ahead and rotate it just like kind of off to the side a little bit more. See if I can get more of a round piece. And then what do I need to do next?
Make sure that's flat.
Flat, and then what?
Put in the
3rd board, okay? Same thing, it needs to go underneath the other 2. Do not break the board by trying to bend it too much, just nice and easy. It's just a little push If you have problems, let me know. Just don't break anything. And I'm rolling the last one. All right. Clay remembers everything you do to it. So it's really important, you don't want to bend this and then try to flatten it back out, because when you have your coil vessel totally done, it starts to dry, the clay will actually start to bend back to the first shape that you made it. So this is nice and flat. I'm going to very carefully, the best that I can, bring this back to my table, and I'm going to put it directly on the table. We're not putting it on canvas because canvas dries out your clay. Okay? I put my clay directly on my table. My table's nice and clean, flat. Now this was in between canvas. Canvas makes really gross texture. We don't want any canvas texture on our projects. So what we're gonna do is take a smooth rib. It looks like a rib, nice and smooth edges. And I'm taking the flat side of my rib, I'm gonna smooth out the flat slab, okay? If we had a curved object, we would wanna use the curved side. So I gently flip. I'm not gonna use all of this, so it's okay if you don't get like the edges. Now, some students love smoothing out slabs, and what they end up doing is they thin out the thickness. They actually take so much clay away, they thin it out. Please don't do that. Just real quick, smooth out both sides and be done with it. If you make your slab too thin, it's a problem. Also, I'm asking you to put it directly on the table, and the table does allow clay to stick. So if you smooth it out so much, or you have clay that's too wet, it's going to stick to the table, okay? So real quick, just smooth out both sides, you're good to go. Then you're gonna go ahead and place it on your board covered in plastic. All right. You're also gonna need to go ahead and draw with your Sgraffito tool. You gotta draw the shape of your base. Now, what is the shape that you are not recommended to make?
Circle.
A circle, right? And what is the thickness again, or the width? 4 to 6 inches. If you need a ruler, rulers are over there next to the orange handled scissors, or you can eyeball it. You want to make sure that there's no sharp angles. Remember we talked about how the coils can't make sharp angles? So if you really want a square base, it needs to be rounded edges, okay? I usually make little amoebic looking squiggles to make my base. I find that when you start building the walls, it's kind of nice to have these little concave areas, so that's kind of why I usually do like a little squiggle. You guys can do whatever you want, okay? Once I make the shape, if I don't like it, you can just kind of smooth it out real quick or just redraw it. You're not gonna see the lines, because how tall is your coil vessel gonna be? 10 to 12. So you're gonna have something super large. You're not gonna be able to see down to see that little line that you made and don't like, okay? So once I have the shape that I like, I'm gonna go ahead and use my Fettling knife. Now, I know the handle's up here, but what I like to do is I hold it closer to the tip of the blade because it allows me to be a little bit more controlled. If you go to cut way back here, you don't have as much control, okay? And you can also move your board around. Again, I'm not directly on the line that I created. It's just a guideline, it's all good. You're not gonna know later on in life if you got it right on that line all the way around. Well, maybe you will, but no one else will. So just do the best you can to kind of follow that line. And then you're gonna want to cut off all the extra. All right? I know, super cool. I do magic in here. So, next step is gonna go ahead and put it on a banding wheel. This banding wheel, it's like a little turntable. Have you guys done anything with like decorating cakes before or things like that? It's the same idea. This little guy's a little sticky, but he works. What we're gonna do is we're gonna be working on the banding wheels, and you'll see why in a second, but it kind of helps us turn our projects on all sides. You can see everything. From here on out, you are not to pick up your project, okay? The only way you move this thing from point A to point B is through the board. You don't pick up the slab, because as I talked about, if you bend the slab too much, it's not gonna sit flat, and your entire coil vessel will kind of like wobble later on, okay? So the way we wanna move this thing is to put it on a banding wheel. Now the banding wheels do come in 2 parts. There's a top and a bottom. If you hold it from the top, the bottom does fall off, and it will make a very loud sound, startle many people, and it could also land on your foot, and that would be sad. No, not a fire hazard.
Could be.
Could be. So you want to make sure to always pick it up from the bottom. Okay, pick it up from the bottom. Don't pick it up from the top. Banding wheels can be found in the middle room. If you're looking at the sink, the cabinet below, below the drawer, that's where they are. All right. So we're going to pretend that I have my 4-pound ball of clay. Again, this is demo sake. I'm not going to keep this. So it's okay if I have air pockets, but it's not okay if you guys do. So let's pretend I have my 4-pound ball of clay. You're going to rip off a little bit, and you're gonna start making your coils. Now our hands make rounded objects. That's what you guys learned about when making your bobblehead. So it's important that you're using your hand to create a nice long rope-like piece of clay. To roll out a coil, I'm using all the way, let me move this guy so you guys can see a little better. So, sorry, kind of hard. Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going from all the way to the bottom of your palm, all the way to your fingertips and back. And my hands aren't like super rigid, okay? They're kind of loose. They're allowing the clay just to kind of move in between themselves and the table, and that's what creates the coil. Some students are going to find that they make kind of flatter coils at first, and they kind of like bump around. If your coil is flat like this, what you can do is take it to a high point, so it's kind of standing upright, and then just gently kind of press it down, and then continue to roll, okay? You can also always take your hand, kind of round it back out, and then continue to coil. What's the desired thickness? 1/4 inch, okay? You guys can go smaller or thinner than that, but you cannot go thicker, so it's important that you're getting to a 1/4 inch. If you don't make really long coils at first, that's okay too. It takes a lot of practice. So don't feel like if you don't make a super long coil, you can't use it. You can use whatever you make. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my toothed rib, has the teeth on it, and I'm gonna run it along just once on the coil. And then I'm gonna go ahead and slip. So I just scratched. I'm gonna go ahead and take, if your slip is not sticky and you can't smooth it on nice, then you need to add more water to it. If you're running low on slip, then you need to go ahead and add more to your slip container. All right, and then I take my coil, and you're going to put it directly on the edge, on top of your base, but at the edge, and you're gonna start to attach it. And as I start to attach it, I kind of give a nice little gentle press just to make sure it's really attached. This first coil is super important because if it's not attached well to your base, then the rest of your entire coil vessel will not be attached. It'll pop right off. And go all the way around. It's okay if your coil does not reach all the way around. What we can do, yeah, it's supposed to be organic. So you can just, ooh, did I get it? Look at that, just short. No, it's too short. So if I have a little space, what I can do is the next coil that I make will just go right on top of it and continue around, okay? But for this first coil, what's super important is you're going to smooth the base up into the first coil. So we're getting rid of the seam, okay? That way it ensures the first coil is attached. So you can use a clay shaper, a nice clean clay shaper. And what you'll do is you just literally smooth up from the base up to the coil all the way around. You guys can also use a finger. I like to use my fingers because I just have more control than a tool. And you're gonna go all the way around until you don't see a seam. You can also use a smooth rib, okay? Once you go all the way around, then you would go ahead, roll out another coil. I've also have had students in the past, they try to make like more clay than this into a coil. If you guys try to roll out too much clay at one time, it's also more difficult. So don't pull off more than like the palm of your hand. Start off small and then you can always go with more clay later on. Trying to think of what else. What shapes were you guys thinking about making? besides like a normal straight coil? What kind of shapes were you gonna make?
It actually looked exactly like that.
A wave? What were you thinking?
A star with like rounded points.
Oh, that's gonna be
Kinda
tricky.
So
There you go. One thing I forgot to mention, so when we're rolling out larger coils, using both hands is also gonna help, but you wanna make sure your hands are going at the same time. Don't start going like this, because your coils aren't gonna be nice and round and consistent. So as you start to roll, just kind of, you know, keep in mind what your hands are doing. If you have really warm hands or your clay is really dry, it's gonna crack easy. So you definitely need a spray bottle near you, and you're gonna spray your hands while you're rolling. Don't spray the table, because this table is slippery and your coil is just gonna like roll around, okay? But any coils that you guys make in here during the same class time have to be attached to your coil vessel. You cannot keep coils later on, all right? So let's say if you wanted to make a swirl, what you can do is take one end, and again, if you want to do swirls, twists, braids, anything that you're gonna like want to twist the coil, you're gonna want to have like wetter clay, because you're gonna see in this one that the clay is gonna start to crack a little bit. But what you'll do is you literally just start to make a little swirl, and when you're done, cut it off. I did not scratch and slip in between, because this guy is going to be in between a bunch of other coils that's going to make sure it stays together, so I didn't scratch and slip it to itself. But what you can do is I take a tooth rib, scratch the part that's going to be attached, and I dip it and slip. Use more slip than you think you actually need. If your coil vessel falls apart on you, only you are to blame. I'm warning you now. Put enough slip on your project, and then press. I would recommend, if you're gonna have something this big, try to build around it before the end of class. That way this isn't like gonna flop over for 2 days while it's waiting for you to come back to work on it, okay? We talked about making little pebbles for other little details. Again, just scratching a little bit and dipping it in slip. And I like to use them when I'm trying to like fill in small areas. They should not be super big. Again, 1/4 inch is like kind of your desired thickness. So kind of tap that in, stick it on. For braids, it'd be just like you braid hair. Again, you don't have to scratch and slip the 3 pieces. Just kind of make sure that they're scratch and slipped onto the piece. Same with twists. If you wanted to have some type of like wave, you could slip this part, and then what you'll need to do is every time you attach the next part, you also need to go ahead and slip. Preferably scratch, but if you can't get to scratch, at least add some slip to it. And then I would attach it again. Notice how you guys can have spaces, but the more spaces you have, the more fragile your piece is. So I would recommend not doing what I'm doing right now. I would recommend doing your first couple layers just nice and straight to get down a nice foundation, and then from there you can start to add more detail. At the end of each day, if you have time to kind of clean up any slip that's recommended, you are not smoothing out the outside of your coil vessel. Every seam you will see. The inside you can smooth, and that again is either using a finger or a clay shaper, and just very carefully smoothing out those seams, especially if you want it to stay attached or if you want it to hold water. I would recommend doing that. Okay, as we get further up, you can use a smooth rib to kind of do it. It gets a little bit easier. So if we have our coils and they're on top of each other evenly, like this, what kind of wall is it gonna make? A straight wall, right? When we wanna start to have a belly, to have it come out, you're gonna wanna very gradually start to build them slightly on the outside. If you go out too far too quick, the whole thing's gonna collapse on itself. So you have to very gradually kind of put it slightly on the outside of the coil below it, and that kind of builds the belly going out. Same thing if you want it to go in, you very carefully start to put it slightly on the inside of each coil, and that'll kind of make the coil vessel go in.